Well, hey everybody, and welcome to the garden. In today's video, we are going to be canning up some tomatoes. We've got a bunch of Roma tomatoes, and we've got another one, I think it's called a Summer Beauty. We mostly planted Roma tomatoes because they're great for canning. They're not super watery and super seedy. They're real easy to clean up and core, and then you don't get a bunch of water in your jars. So we're going to be going through, picking everything that is ready ripe, some that are almost ripe. In addition to that, cleaning up anything that just fell and rolled onto the ground. Now, they're not for scrap or waste. We can set those aside, set them up on the table, let them finish ripening. They will ripen even though they're not on the vine. No worries at all. But you can see everything's looking a little sad. It's been a little dry the last couple days. We had a heck of a storm come through here, so we've been dealing with that. We still have a tree to cut down here and on the other end over the potatoes. So it's been a bit of an obstacle. Usually this is my son Murdoch's job. He's 15 and he is the master gardener. We're having some tree safety, so I said I will dive in and get them myself and take a break from my other canning. Now, I don't usually like to can in the house when it's 80, 90 degrees. I try to choose a cooler day, but we're juggling everything. It is a holiday weekend. There's storm cleanup going on. People are on vacation. We had a huge yard sale this weekend, and at the same time trying to stock the pantry. So we made a huge double batch of salsa with all of the tomatoes post-storm that were ready to go. And then we found turkey on sale, and we were able to debone and can 2 turkeys. And we did a lot of beans, kidney beans, navy beans, we did black beans, we did bean soup, baked beans, did I say that? So busy week of canning, but now all of a sudden yesterday it turned hot and we still have more work to do. So let's see what we come up with today and find out if we're going to be spending our afternoon canning. So with the heat we've had, and for the most part lack of rain all summer, the garden has solely relied on being brought water, whether it's from the kids dumping out the swimming pool or emptying out cattle water and things like that. They are definitely in need of some water today. So everything ripe or almost ripe has been harvested. This one was on the ground, and because it's been dry and not very wet, we're at the point we're getting a lot of night dew now. Slugs will get into these and wreck what's left of them. So we definitely want to make sure that anything that may be on the ground is cleaned up. We had quite a success this year with some heavy-duty tomato cages and electric fence stakes by tying them to those stakes. But there are certain areas where he had surplus plants where some of these laid on the ground last year and composted down. They're a little harder to get to, and some of those weren't able to be divided. Now, we ended up with 63 tomato plants this year planted in the garden and divided off. We sold off a couple of dozen, but there's going to be so much to harvest in the next week or two as long as we get some water on this today, because there are a lot of green ones still on the vine, and it's better to let them ripen on the vine than out in the sun. These are almost there. In a day or two they're going to be ready, and if they're on my table on the patio, I'll be able to watch them more close to know when they're ready to can. So here is my harvest from today. Almost a 5-gallon bucket. That's quite a bit. But as you can see, like that last one I showed, it's a bit green, it's a bit white even, and a lot of them still need some ripening time. So we've got this patio gazebo set up on our deck, and it lets light filter in without being in the direct sun, which is great for sorting. So I've been using the patio table. It's been too hot to be outside enjoying this at night anyway. It's starting to get a little cooler, so we kind of have to work on this situation and get these canned up. I think there is enough to do a little bit of canning today or tomorrow, so we're going to sort through these. Now, most of these have already been sitting here for 2 to 3 days, but as you can see, a few of them aren't quite there yet. Some of them just won't ripen at all. These are just set aside for the chickens, because if I leave these to compost in the garden, I'm going to have those little tomato forests again that we talked about earlier in the season from letting those sit there. So we're going to go ahead and sort through these. None of these are overripe. They're firm. They are fresh for eating at this point or for canning. So while I sort these, this is a really good time to talk about dollars and cents with canning and with our salsa. Our home has 7 people and we work on our farm. We sell hay for a living. We've always got a side hustle of buying and selling things in general. I have an Etsy shop and we make the YouTube videos. That pretty well covers the essentials. Now, I would say salsa in our house is kind of a luxury item. We switched from the national brand. I think we were buying Chi-Chi's, and to save about $1 a week, we switched to the local grocery store brand, which is Meijer. So a lot of times they have different M perks for rewards for buying the store brands. So we started accumulating store points to do that, and it saves money on like your next purchase. So laying all these tomatoes out on the table made me think about, well, I don't have to buy canning jars, so there's that. And I still have a good supply of brand new unused canning jars, so if needed, I don't even have to buy bands and lids for my old jars because the lids are not reusable, the bands are. However, they do get rusty in a damp basement. So you have to keep that in mind, that occasionally you may need to buy replacement bands as well. If I had to go buy all these ingredients, I have seen bushel baskets of tomatoes for sale by other growers locally, like on Facebook, for about $25 a bushel. That's not too bad, considering that if you were to go to a nursery of any kind and buy a single plant in the spring, you might be spending about $5 a plant. Well, for one plant, you can get quite a few tomatoes, and these Romas are putting out like crazy. Now, if you don't already know this, our garden is the former pig pen. We didn't raise pigs this year, and before it was a pig pen, we used that area to grow our first crop of pumpkins and our first crop of potatoes. They did really great. It's super dark soil, but when you add in that pig manure to it also, oh my gosh, totally natural fertilizer. We also top dress a lot of our plants and seeds with manure from the cows, doing cow pen clean out and whatnot. So we didn't have any money in for fertilizer. However, this year they were late on starting their seeds on some things. We were early on the tomatoes, late on the peppers. So I have to buy in my peppers. So to buy regular store-bought peppers, they're about 99 cents a piece, sometimes 89. And if you were to buy organic, it's a little bit more money. So I saw organic ones for about $1.29. Now, I would prefer to buy the organics when they have them in stock, but they don't always. I guarantee you the salsa that we're buying at the store is not organic. So however I get this salsa made, I'm going to go with it. Now, we did plant onions. We planted onion from seed, and we planted starts. So Murdoch has been working on these and keeping them weed-free all summer. Now, these little tomato starts started out teeny tiny little pearl onions, and that's as big as some of them got. This is a large one. This is an average small one. So some of them didn't grow very well. And the seeds, it's like they're never going to be big. They're going to be seed starts for next year or bulb starts for next year. We take a little bit of garlic. You can use apple cider vinegar or lemon. I used the Ball Blue Book of Canning Fiesta or Zesty salsa. It was so simple. The biggest trick is not over processing any of your vegetables with the chopping blade in the food processor. I will tell you, I started out hand chopping some things and putting it through the processor. I gotta find a good medium between them both, and I think a lot of it is going to be taking any of the excess juice through a strainer to not have that end up in my salsa final product, because I don't want it too runny. My first batch was, because I didn't do the draining off, and at $4.49 a jar is the normal price, $4.59. That's $233 a year at 1 jar of 46 ounces a week. Now our family on a good week is using more than 1 jar of salsa, and we don't even do a lot of Mexican meals. They eat a lot of chips with salsa, melted cheese with chips, and we do taco night usually once or twice a week depending on what's going on, and homemade enchiladas and burritos. It's a good topping and substitute of doing like ketchup all the time. So we found a good medium with that, and with canning it ourselves, it is a great alternative to a lot of store-bought items. So for our recipe, to do a double batch, I need 12 pounds of tomatoes, and I'm pretty sure this is going to cover it. If I want to do a single batch with about 6 jars, it's 6 pounds of tomatoes, like 3 pounds of these beautiful onions. I've got that covered. About 3 cloves of garlic, and then I need a handful of green peppers, and I like to do the jalapeno peppers. You can do habaneros or whatever kind of pepper you like for that little bit of zing, apple cider vinegar, and a pinch of salt. Now, if you're like us and your bounty is giving you so much extra that you've been blessed with extra, bless some other people maybe. Ask some older people in the neighborhood who might be on a tight income, or a young family that's just starting out. Invite a mom over to teach her how to can and send her home with a couple of jars. There are free libraries around town for books. There are also some around for food where somebody could just drive up, walk up, ride a bike, and get a few things to be able to make for dinner that they might be short on and that they don't have money for that night's meal or the next meal. So even just putting a handful of fresh tomatoes there could be helping somebody. And there's always people around that are regularly visiting those donation drop-offs to make sure that things stay fresh. You know, you could stock it with a little cooler or anything like that. It really helps a person to know that there are people in the community to help them, even if it's something as simple as, you know, a handful of tomatoes or a bushel of tomatoes or a couple jars of your fresh canned supplies. So always keeping that in mind. We're always keeping ahead of the harvest also. I try to come out here and pick anything that's going to be ready for 2 days so that I don't really have to come back out here for 2 days. And if there's watering or weeding or anything like that that needs to be done, the boys take over in that respect. I was busy this summer, and my son maintained this entire garden mostly on his own, and I would just come out once a week maybe for an hour and pull weeds or help him, you know, thin plants and seeds to new spots. So, you know, teamwork, the family working together, and just don't let yourself get overwhelmed. I was short about a half a bushel for my next batch. I waited 2 days. I came out here today. I've got enough for 2 batches of salsa and tomato sauce right now. So today we're starting out with about a bushel of washed Roma tomatoes. Like I said before, mixed, use whatever you have. We are going to clean and core these. We'll take the tops off. Basically, I slice them in half real easy. I'll cut off any bad spots. Save all of this for compost or for your livestock. Chickens love it. So I talked about the recipe earlier outside, and I've already gone ahead and minced my onion. I've done some in the food processor and some by hand. I found the food processor made my first batch a little too liquidy, so I put less onions per batch in there, like 3 at a time, and then chopped half of my onions by hand to make sure that they didn't become juicy. And you can drain off any of that liquid also before putting it in the pot. And this green right here is my cilantro, and there's a little bit of garlic in here too. You can't really see it, but 6 cloves of garlic because I'm doubling my recipe. Now, garlic is one of those superfoods that it's not going to hurt you to add any extra. So again, this is just, you know, a rough estimate. You can play with it as you make it and create it. And we just really like a lot of garlic for health reasons. The cilantro, this is what it looks like at the store. It's about 89 cents a bundle, $1.29 for the organic. So we did pick up the organic this time. And it's real easy to just use your kitchen shears and just cut it over and over. And then I went over it with my serrated knife. A straight blade knife may work better. It's just is what I already had out. And then I just sliced it up into smaller bits so that I don't get a big chunk of this leaf in my salsa. You don't want to do a dried cilantro or anything. Maybe if it's something that you dehydrated at home, but you want that good fresh flavor, and the dried herbs and spices, they just don't do the same thing. So we're gonna glove up for doing our peppers, and I've got jalapeno peppers and serrano peppers, and same thing, get those seeds out of there because that's where your heat is, and we will put those aside and process all of our green peppers as well. So I find that after a long day's of canning, my legs can really get tired, and my kitchen's so tiny, I would need to have 3 anti-fatigue mats. I found that if I take a stool from the counter and park it at the table and just sit a little different, I can take a break from my legs, and it gets me over the top of the food for cutting. I just threw that whole pit in the wrong bowl, and now I'm filled full of seeds. Oh, so pit core. I take my cores from my peppers, and I have said before, if you are going to seed save, this is the time to do it, because it's real easy to just grab a handful and set them aside before they're gone, because before you know it, you've harvested so much. Or like tonight's going to be 44 degrees. Doing this canning late in the day like I am today, we started out early. But with the cow and errands and farming, it ends up using up our day. So what I'm doing is I just stick my hand, my thumb, into the top, and I pull it in half like this. Now, my main job years ago, when I was going to college, I worked at a sandwich shop, and I had to clean up and prep vegetables for sandwiches. So I got really good at this. And then this one had some bad spots on it, so I'm just cutting them out. And it won't go to waste. We'll give that to the chickens. We have about 7 green peppers here we're going to process. And with the food processor, these can really put out a lot of liquid. So you want to really watch that and use the pulse to make sure that you don't over process it and get messy liquid that you have to drain off, because like I said before, you don't want a really runny salsa, and if you like a chunky salsa, sometimes the food processor over processes it. So just be aware of that and go slow. So a really good way to seed save is to let these sit here like this and let them kind of dry off, or just rub them off onto paper or cardboard and let them dry naturally, and then they will be all ready to be marked and put away for next year. These 3 seed cores had a good amount of seeds on them, real healthy, good peppers, where like this one, you see, it didn't produce good seeds. It was a little soft, the core wasn't firm. So save and plant as much as you think you might need. And in our case, maybe a little more than you might need, because when you start doing salsa, you're going through peppers heavily, and your neighbors might need some, or you can put some in the Blessings food bank, that sort of thing. So you can see I'm packing this real lightly, and I've made these smaller, about quarters to 6 sections, and I've cut all the ribs, all the white membrane out of the center so that that doesn't end up in the finished salsa. And then rather than turn this on and walk away, I'm just hitting pulse. Again, I'm using my Cuisinart 12-cup food processor. I've said before, it's always worked really good for me. The only failure I've had is there's a plastic locking tab here and here. I'll show you. It got bumped in my closet, and that locking tab broke off. And the one that's right here, it got hit on something, and it's not locking there. So for little things like this, it works fine. But if I'm doing rhubarb, or if I throw shredded cheese in there, it wants to jump off and isn't great for use. So we're looking for a replacement bowl if you have one. See, just real gentle. Now my bulk has gone away. And then if I have any big pieces like this, I just re-chop them rather than keep going. Because if you keep going, that's where you get the too much liquid. Great. So now we just take this over here and I add it to my pot. I've added, this is a double batch, my 6 teaspoons of salt. I added 1/3 cup of lemon juice because I like that extra kick. Lime juice is nice too. And I have about 2.5 cups of apple cider vinegar in here also. Now I just keep mixing all of my stuff together, each ingredient. Then those flavors start marrying as I am working on the next item. So now we have peppers to do, and the best thing to do is slice off the end, slice it in half, and I can cut out the center. Let's see if I can do this with one hand. Oh, look at that. Okay, so we just slice off the end, slice it in half, and we're gonna cut out all this white pith in the middle, and then we can chop them by hand or throw them in the food processor just the same. And again, we're trying to avoid some of the seeds to keep the heat low. If you like it a little more hot, you can leave the seeds in. Aesthetically, I don't find it very pleasing to have a bunch of seeds in my salsa, so I just want to get them out and use your peppers or your variety of peppers as your heat. And you can always add bottled hot pepper sauce also, or like cayenne pepper, things like that for that heat to avoid the seeds. So we're just going to go ahead and go through here. This is about 2 pounds of peppers. I make myself a big pile here on the cutting board, and then I just use my thumb. I got a scrap bowl here, and I just pull the whole thing out all in one. I go over again with the seed, and in the food processor it goes. It makes it fast. It makes it a lot less tedious than slicing each one out. So see, I'm just going like this into it. It all goes into my hand, and then I just throw it into the container. So this has been boiling, simmering for 10 minutes, and now it's ready to go into hot jars with lids and bands, and it's going to go in the canner, and we're going to do the water bath canning. So we'll get back with you as soon as we got these ready to go. Okay, so once you have these all filled, and you see I left myself anywhere from, you know, a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch headspace. I like to go up to this bottom rim. That's a good indication. And you just put your lid on with these magnetic ones. There we go. And just finger tight. If you make these too tight, you can actually have broken jars in the canner, especially with pressure canning. So keep that in mind. Some people do prefer to do pressure canning with salsa because of all the extra ingredients, but that's where the apple cider vinegar or lemon juice comes in hand, because it's going to equal out that acidity. And a lot of people don't add any of that. And I haven't heard of a lot of trouble with it either. Just set that on there. Now, before I banded these this way, I took hot boiling water. Some people like to use vinegar, and you clean that rim off before you put this on. So I'm going to make sure that these are all nice and hand finger tight. We've got hot water bath going right here. We're going to put them in, lower them down, put the lid on, get it boiling, and then start our timer.
Well, I had a real successful evening of canning. I just kept it going through with these quarts. It just goes so well. I end up with a double batch, exactly 14 jars. I didn't have any leftovers. It was just a perfect night of getting this all done. I pulled them out of the canner at like 10, 11 o'clock last night. Just slowly worked through it. A good day of chopping. It was really good doing the mix of a lot of stuff by hand, because I didn't get any like excess water or juice. On 2 jars, I had not quite a full jar. And you can see it caused a little separation under the heat. So we'll just make sure to mark those to know to drain off a little water when we do that. And when I do that, I always save any water because it's just like having vegetable broth and vegetable stock. So we'll be able to use that in cooking rice. Nice recipe, real easy to do. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.